On Sunday, August 5th, 1962, a gunshot rang out inside Reverend Henry Calloway's church, shattering the calm of the congregation and marking the beginning of a story no one could have predicted. In an instant, the lives of two prominent figures, Reverend Henry and his wife Ella, were violently stolen, and the town of Maple Ridge was forever altered. Their deaths would uncover a secret so dark it had been buried for decades, hidden behind the very walls that once echoed with prayers and hymns. But what seemed like an unthinkable tragedy quickly became a twisted tale of betrayal, deception, and a family's past that refused to stay buried. Today, we're diving into the chilling story of the Calloway family, where a mother's dark secret would lead to a double murder and destroy everything she had spent her life building. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date with more true crime stories that will leave you questioning everything. Let's begin. Reverend Henry Calloway and his wife, Ella, were pillars of their community. Henry, a well-respected pastor, had spent years preaching about faith and devotion, earning the trust and admiration of everyone who knew him. Ella, his wife, was known for her kindness and quiet strength. Together, they had built a life that seemed perfect to those who saw them from the outside. To the public, they were the ideal couple, the embodiment of love, faith, and family. But no one knew what lay behind closed doors. The Calloways' marriage, while outwardly flawless, was far from what it appeared. Ella had long carried a secret that she had carefully hidden from everyone, one that, if it ever came to light, would shatter the foundation of everything she had worked to build. Henry, though deeply devoted to his wife, had no idea of the dark reality that had been kept from him. In a home full of love and faith, something else was taking place. The small town of Maple Ridge was one where everyone knew everyone, where the streets were lined with familiar faces, and the air was thick with the scent of old traditions. People lived their lives knowing that their neighbors' stories were intertwined with their own. It was a place where things were supposed to stay peaceful and simple. But Maple Ridge had its share of secrets. Secrets that, like all hidden things, could only stay buried for so long. The Calloway family was about to face a devastating truth, one that would tear them apart. For years, Henry had been unaware of the dark history that haunted his wife, a history that stretched back decades, one that began long before they had ever met. But as the years passed, the cracks began to show. The secrets of Ella's past would surface in the most violent and shocking way possible, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning had started like any other in Maple Ridge. The sun was shining through the stained glass windows of the church, casting colorful reflections on the wooden pews where the congregation had gathered. The choir had just settled into place, preparing to sing the hymn that would mark the beginning of the Sunday service. The air was thick with anticipation, the familiar sense of community hanging in every corner. Then, without warning, the first shot rang out. The sound of the gunfire was deafening, cutting through the air like a blade. Reverend Henry Calloway, standing at the pulpit, was struck in an instant. His body jerked, and a crimson stain began to spread across his chest. He stood frozen, hands still gripping the sides of the podium as the life seemed to drain from him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. There was nothing he could say. Before anyone could even process what had just happened, a second shot was fired. The sound echoed through the church, and this time it struck Ella Calloway, his wife, who had been standing just a few feet away. She collapsed on the floor beside her husband, her body lifeless before it even had the chance to fully comprehend what had just occurred. Pandemonium erupted in the church. The screams of terrified parishioners filled the air as people scrambled toward the exits, desperate to escape whatever horror had unfolded. Some stumbled over chairs. Others collided with the walls in their frantic rush. But amidst the chaos, one figure stood still. Clara Calloway, Reverend Henry's wife, moved through the scene with unsettling calm. She didn't flee. She didn't scream. Her eyes, cold and focused, remained fixed on the lifeless bodies of her husband and his wife. Clara, the woman who had spent decades playing the role of a grieving widow, now stood revealed in her true light. The carefully constructed image of a devoted wife, someone who had mourned her husband's death for years, crumbled in an instant. The woman who had played the part of the widow was the mastermind behind it all. The truth had been hidden for so long, buried beneath a veil of grief and sorrow. But in that moment, Everything was exposed. Clara had orchestrated the murders, and no one, not even her closest allies, could have predicted it. For years, whispers have been circulating throughout the town of Maple Ridge. It started with little comments here and there, hushed tones in the corners of the church, a glance exchanged between old friends when Clara Calloway and Deacon Thomas Burke were seen together more often than was considered proper. Their closeness raised eyebrows, but no one could have truly imagined the extent of their relationship. To the outside world, they were just two well-respected members of the church, a woman mourning her late husband and a deacon dedicated to his faith. Yet beneath the surface, their bond had grown into something far more complicated. Clara had been secretly involved with Thomas for years, and over time, their relationship deepened into something far darker than anyone could fathom. What started as an affair, a shared secret between the two, eventually evolved into something far more dangerous. Clara and Thomas had conspired together, and by the time Henry Calloway's life was taken, they had already mapped out their plan to murder him. The perfect murder, they had thought. One that would rid Clara of a husband she had never truly loved and give her the freedom she so desperately craved. But the lies didn't end with Henry's death in 1924. In the years that followed, Clara and Thomas continued their relationship in the shadows, never letting anyone in on the true nature of their connection. Even when Clara had remarried, no one questioned her past, and the life she had built around her second marriage seemed as flawless as the first. All the while, she maintained her position at the heart of the church, subtly manipulating the congregation, ensuring her secrets remained safe. However, as time passed, the weight of these secrets began to take their toll. In his final moments, Thomas Burke, now an older man facing his own mortality, could no longer carry the burden of the truth. Alone in his home, with the weight of the years pressing down on him, Thomas confessed to his daughter, Lily, the truth he had kept hidden for so long. He spoke of the affair. He spoke of the murder. But the part that shook Lily the most was the revelation about her own parentage. The man she had always believed to be her father was not, in fact, her biological father. In a voice tinged with regret and fear, Thomas revealed that Clara had never truly been a widow. Her real husband had died long ago, and the man Lily had known as her father had been nothing more than a lie. Lily's world shattered in that moment. Everything she thought she knew about herself, about her family, was now tainted by the dark truth her father had kept hidden from her. The revelation would change her life forever, as it would soon lead her to confront her mother, and the terrible secrets that lay buried beneath the surface. Devastated by her father's confession, Lily Calloway struggled to process the unimaginable truth that had just shattered her reality. The revelation that everything she had known about her family was a lie gnawed at her, but it was one particular piece of evidence that would force her to face the full extent of her mother's deceit. While going through her father's things, Lily discovered a small tape recorder, one that had been carelessly left behind by Thomas. When she pressed play, the voice of her father filled the room, weak and trembling, recounting the entire history of his affair with Clara and the terrible murder they had both committed. The confession played out in a voice filled with regret. Thomas spoke of his guilt, of how they had planned and executed the murder of Henry Calloway all those years ago, and the deceit that had continued long after. But the worst part for Lily wasn't just a murder. It was a shocking revelation of her own birth, and the identity of the man she had always thought was her father. Thomas's voice was filled with sorrow as he admitted the truth, and it was this that tore through Lily's heart, leaving her unable to breathe. Her father had confessed everything, but the final truth was the most devastating. Her entire life had been built on a falsehood. With her world crumbling around her, Lily knew she had to confront her mother. She couldn't live in the shadow of this lie any longer. As she stood in front of Clara, tape recorder in hand, she demanded answers, hoping for some sign of remorse, some explanation that might begin to repair the shattered pieces of their family. But Clara's response was chilling. There was no apology, no pleading for forgiveness. Instead, Clara, with unnerving calmness, dismissed her daughter's pain. "Go home," she said coldly, as if the years of deception, betrayal, and murder were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Clara's expression remained unreadable, as if the weight of the secrets she had kept for so long no longer affected her. She had lived her life in a way that kept her in control, always knowing that no matter the cost, her lies would protect her. Clara knew in that moment that her carefully crafted life of deceit was about to come crashing down. Her son, Otis, had grown suspicious and was ready to expose everything. The truth could no longer be contained. The lies were unraveling, and with them, the fragile world Clara had so meticulously built over the years was on the brink of collapse. That Sunday morning, Otis Calloway stood at the pulpit, a heavy burden weighing on him. His heart was pounding, but his resolve was unwavering. He had spent the days leading up to this moment preparing, knowing that the time had come to reveal the truth to the congregation, the truth that had been hidden for far too long. Otis was ready to speak about the lies, the murder, the betrayal, and the family he had spent his life trusting. The weight of everything he had uncovered hung heavily on his shoulders as he addressed the congregation, urging them to seek the truth, no matter how painful. But Clara Calloway, sitting quietly in the front pew, had already made her decision. She had known this moment would come. She had known that her carefully constructed life, built on deceit and manipulation, would one day be exposed. And so, she waited for Otis to speak the words that would undo everything she had spent so long protecting. As Otis began to speak, his voice steady but filled with emotion, Clara reached into her purse, her hands moving with a cold precision. The congregation, unaware of what was about to happen, sat in silence, hanging on every word Otis said. But just as he began to speak of the final betrayal, the murder of his father, Clara's hand emerged, holding a gun. The gunshot rang out in the church, slicing through the air and striking Otis square in the chest. The congregation froze, the sound of the shot echoing in the stunned silence. Otis staggered back, his hand gripping the pulpit, the blood quickly staining his shirt as he collapsed onto the floor. Before anyone could react, a second shot rang out, silencing the life of his wife, Lily, standing nearby. The church was consumed by chaos. Screams, footsteps pounding on the wooden floors, panic filling the air. But Clara, the woman who had orchestrated it all, remained calm, her eyes cold, her grip steady. She stood in the center of the chaos, the gun still raised. It was over. Clara's arrest was swift and without resistance. There was no struggle, no attempt to flee. She simply walked out of the church, her posture as dignified as it had always been. But the dignity she carried with her had lost its meaning. It was as if in one swift motion she had destroyed the very legacy she had worked so hard to build. The church, her family, her role in the community, all of it had crumbled. She had spent her life protecting a web of lies, and now, with her son's blood on her hands, there was nothing left to hold her up in the courtroom. The truth that Clara had hidden for decades was exposed for all to see. The tape recorder, which had once been a simple piece of evidence, now played the full extent of her crimes. Thomas's confession, weak but undeniable, filled the room, telling the story of the affair, the murder, and the years of lies that followed. As the tape echoed through the courtroom, the truth was no longer something that could be ignored or swept aside. It was inescapable, and it shattered the last vestiges of Clara's carefully controlled world. For the first time, Clara's calm exterior began to crack. As the truth unfolded in front of her, she couldn't keep up the act any longer. Her eyes, which had once been cold and unyielding, betrayed a flicker of something. Fear, regret, or perhaps the realization that the end had come. The weight of everything she had hidden for so long was finally laid bare, and for the first time, Clara was forced to face the full scope of her actions. Clara Calloway's entire life had been built on lies, lies she carefully crafted and guarded for years. She had shaped her family's faith and her place in the community on deception, manipulating the trust of those who looked up to her. But in the end, the truth could no longer be hidden. It came crashing down, shattering everything she had worked to protect. The web of lies she had woven to shield herself in the past had finally unraveled, and her actions caught up with her in the most irreversible way. The tragic fate of Otis and Lily Calloway is a testament to the consequences of the secrets that can fester in the darkest corners of a family's past. Otis, who had spent his life searching for the truth, and Lily, whose love for her mother had been shattered by the truth she could never undo. Both of them now lay side by side, forever linked by the lies of a generation before them. Their graves serve as a reminder of the pain caused by betrayal, and the town of Maple Ridge would never be the same again. The story of Clara Calloway is a harsh reminder that no matter how carefully secrets are hidden, They cannot remain buried forever. And when the truth finally comes to light, it doesn't just destroy the lives of those who kept it. It devastates everyone it touches. The legacy of Clara Calloway is not one of faith and devotion, but one of deception, and it left behind a trail of destruction that no one in Maple Ridge would ever forget. What are your thoughts on Clara Calloway's actions? Do you think her guilt will haunt her legacy forever? Or do you believe she'll be remembered for something else? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this story captivating and want to hear more tales of hidden truths and shocking revelations, don't forget to subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new true crime story. Stay tuned for more, and thank you for watching.